The story follows Stephen, a cardiac surgeon whose family is haunted by a curse brought upon them by Martin, the son of one of Stephen's deceased patients. Martin's father died during a surgery that Stephen performed, and this tragic event sets off a chilling chain of events. To break the curse, Stephen is faced with an unthinkable decision to kill one of his family members to save the rest. The film begins with Stephen, who has just finished performing an open-heart surgery. Soon after, he meets Martin, a 16-year-old boy whose father was one of Stephen's patients and died during the operation. Although the surgery was unsuccessful, Stephen feels a deep sense of guilt over the death. As a result, he spends time with Martin, attempting to ease his conscience. At the end of one of their meetings, Stephen gifts Martin a watch. Later, Stephen returns home to his wife, Anna, and their 2 children, Bob and Kim. During dinner, he talks about spending time with Martin, and Anna suggests inviting him over for dinner. That night, as Stephen and Anna head to bed, it becomes evident that Stephen has a strange fixation with anesthesia, especially enjoying when Anna pretends to be unconscious, giving him a sense of control and excitement. The next day, Martin tries to meet Stephen unexpectedly, causing Stephen to feel irritated since he's busy. Stephen advises Martin not to show up without notice again. Martin apologizes, explaining that he just wanted to show Stephen the new strap he got for the watch. A few days later, they meet again, and Stephen invites Martin to have lunch at his house. Martin accepts, arriving later with gifts for the entire family. He spends the afternoon with Bob and Kim, showing particular interest in Kim. The 2 go for a walk and return to the house after some time. During this visit, Martin also invites Stephen's family to his house for dinner. That evening, Martin calls Stephen to inform him that he has already told his mother that the family will be joining them for dinner the next day. Stephen agrees, and the next evening, they go to Martin's house for dinner. After the meal, Martin asks Stephen to stay and watch a movie, but Stephen declines, and Martin heads to bed. Meanwhile, Martin's mother becomes infatuated with Stephen, expressing her desire for him to stay. Once again, Stephen refuses and leaves. The following day, Martin visits Stephen at the hospital, complaining of chest pain and suggesting that he may have inherited heart problems from his father, whose weak heart led to his death. After a thorough checkup, Stephen finds nothing wrong with Martin and reassures him that his heart is fine. Despite this, Martin extends another invitation for dinner, but Stephen declines. Martin, still persistent, mentions that his mother would be delighted to have Stephen over again, even suggesting they would make a good couple. Stephen firmly reminds Martin that he is happily married with children, and he turns down the offer once more. Over time, Martin grows more obsessive, repeatedly seeking Stephen's attention. However, Stephen begins ignoring him. One evening, Kim mentions that Martin gave her a ride home, which irritates Stephen, as he starts feeling uncomfortable with Martin's behavior. Soon after, Stephen notices Martin standing outside his house, observing them from afar. The next morning, as Stephen gets ready for work, he realizes that Bob hasn't gotten out of bed. Upon checking, Bob complains about his legs being in pain. Initially, Stephen is angry, thinking Bob is playing a joke, but it quickly becomes apparent that something is seriously wrong. Bob's legs have mysteriously stopped functioning. Panicked, Stephen and Anna rush Bob to the hospital. After a few tests, Bob appears to improve and is sent home, only to relapse again shortly after. Once more, they admit him to the hospital. As the doctors scramble to figure out what's causing Bob's paralysis, Stephen and Anna are shocked to find Martin sitting in Bob's hospital room the next day. Martin claims he was there to visit Bob. Meanwhile, Anna brings Bob some cinnamon donuts as a treat. Later, Martin requests to meet Stephen in the hospital cafeteria. When Stephen arrives, Martin surprises him with a Swiss Army knife as a gift. During this encounter, Martin reveals his twisted plan. In order to restore balance after his father's death, Stephen must kill one of his family members. If Stephen refuses, Martin warns, Bob, Kim, and Anna will suffer an agonizing fate, succumbing to a progressive curse that will cause paralysis, refusal to eat, and eventually bleeding from the eyes. Horrified by this revelation, Stephen throws Martin out of the hospital, unable to comprehend the situation. Despite his disbelief, Stephen can't shake off Martin's ominous words. His fears grow stronger when Bob refuses to eat the following day, raising concerns about the curse. Stephen tries to force Bob to eat, terrified of the consequences Martin predicted, but Anna intervenes, stopping him from pushing Bob too hard. In a separate encounter, Martin spends time with Kim, and she confesses her feelings for him. As they lie together, Kim invites Martin to stay and get closer, but Martin makes an excuse to leave, claiming he has something urgent to attend to. Kim is left behind, confused by his sudden departure. As Bob's condition worsens, a series of specialists are brought in to assess his situation. None of them can provide a clear diagnosis, labeling Bob's condition as psychological. Despite the tests and treatments, Bob's condition remains unexplained. In a fit of frustration, Stephen starts to believe that Bob might be faking his illness, and he becomes increasingly harsh. He drags Bob from his wheelchair, trying to force a confession from him. but Bob insists that he isn't lying. Steven's threats escalate, promising to shave Bob's head and forbid him from watching TV for 2 months if he doesn't admit to faking. However, Bob remains firm in his innocence, further fueling Steven's frustration. Meanwhile, Kim suffers a collapse during a choir practice, and she too is admitted to the hospital. Steven tries to force feed her, but Kim chokes, leading to both children being placed on feeding tubes. Desperate, Steven goes to confront Martin at his home, only to find that the boy isn't there. The next day, Kim receives a call from Martin, and although she tries to leave her hospital bed to see him, she finds no one outside. Meanwhile, Bob attempts to stand, but collapses onto the floor. As Kim returns to her bed, she continues to communicate with Martin, which angers Anna. Frustrated, Anna confiscates Kim's phone to prevent further contact with Martin. Soon after, Anna meets with Martin, suspecting that he possesses some supernatural power. She questions why her family has to suffer for Steven's mistake. Martin coldly replies that this is the only way to restore balance, and that he has no other option. After consulting several doctors, Steven is informed that none of them can determine the cause of his children's illness, believing it to be psychological. With no physical explanation, the children are sent home. Desperate for answers, Anna seeks out the anesthesiologist who assisted Steven during the surgery on Martin's father. She asks him to retrieve the case file to uncover any potential secrets about the operation. Initially, the anesthesiologist agrees, but then reveals he wants something in return. He wants Anna to perform a sexual favor for him. Reluctantly, Anna agrees and pleases him in the car. Once the act is complete, he admits that Martin's father's death was likely Steven's fault, as he had consumed a few drinks before the surgery. Armed with this knowledge, Anna returns home and urges Steven to take decisive action to save their children. Steven, overwhelmed, mocks Anna, sarcastically asking if she expects him to find some magical solution to break the curse. That night, Steven abducts Martin, ties him up, and locks him in the basement. He shows Anna what he has done, and she remains silent, hoping Steven will convince Martin to end whatever he's doing to their family. Steven attempts to intimidate Martin by shooting him in the leg and beating him, but Martin remains unfazed. He warns Steven that if he kills him, he will need to prepare 4 graves, not 3, as he too would die. The next day, Bob and Kim quarrel about which one of them their father might choose to kill. Kim asks Bob if she can have his MP3 player if he is the one to die. Instead of responding, Bob crawls to the living room, grabs a pair of scissors, and cuts his hair. Hoping to gain favor with his father and save his life, Bob proudly shows off his new haircut, a style he knows his father likes. Later, in a desperate bid to win his father's approval, Bob confesses that he no longer wants to be an ophthalmologist, but instead aspires to be a cardiologist, just like Steven. With the looming decision of choosing which family member to sacrifice, Steven visits the school principal the following day. He asks the principal to tell him which of his children is the best, but the principal insists that both children are exceptional. Meanwhile, Anna brings the children to visit Martin, tending to his wounds in an effort to win his sympathy. However, Martin remains indifferent, showing no sign of empathy. Even when Anna attempts to touch his feet in a desperate plea, Martin coldly tells her that time is running out and Bob will die soon. That night, Anna tries to seduce Steven, suggesting that since she can bear more children, he should kill one of the kids instead of her. Steven, however, refuses, saying he's not in the mood. Later, Kim sneaks into the basement, where Martin is tied up, and tries to persuade him to cure her so they can escape together. She offers him a cigarette and unties him, allowing him to leave. Kim attempts to follow him, but Steven and Anna soon discover that both Kim and Martin are missing. In their frantic search, they find Kim crawling on her hands and knees, covered in blood. They take her home and tend to her wounds. In a heartbreaking moment, Kim expresses her love for her family to Steven and offers to sacrifice herself to save them. Steven silently comforts her, seemingly contemplating her offer. As Martin had predicted, Bob's eyes begin to bleed, signaling that his time is running out. Steven, realizing that the curse is real, wipes the blood from Bob's eyes and knows he must make a decision. In the film's climax, Steven blindfolds himself and his family, placing Bob, Kim, and Anna in a circle. Covering his head with a woolen hat, he spins around randomly before firing his gun. His first shot misses, and he lifts the hat to see that all of them are still alive. Determined, he tries again, nearly hitting Anna. On his third attempt, the bullet strikes Bob, killing him instantly. In the final scene, Martin is seen at the diner where he and Steven used to meet. With Bob now dead, Steven, Anna, and Kim continue their lives, having survived the curse. Martin's prophecy is fulfilled, as Steven restored balance by taking the life of a family member, just as he had inadvertently taken Martin's father's life. As the family prepares to leave the diner, Kim, now recovered, glances back one last time before they walk out the door together. End the movie. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.